Everybody, welcome back to On the Roof, and today we're at the Bolton Center of the Performing Arts with musician Devon Allman. Welcome, Devon.
Thank you for having me. Hey, all right. Glad to be here.
So I would think the elephant in the room for you would be the last name Allman.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the obviously with the history of the Allman Brothers and, what my father and uncle, have done for this genre of music. When people look to me, it's the first thing on their mind. I don't think about it. I've got my head in my own game, and I've got 9 records under my belt and tour a bunch. So it's kind of the last thing on my mind. But, I know that's an initial attractor, for people.
Right. But you actually went out of your way to establish your own unique sound.
Well, I think any artist that really just kind of pulls together all their influences and their inspirations is going to be unique because it's your own unique blend of what inspired you and influenced you in the first place. I've always just tried to play with heart and sing with heart and write songs with heart. And if they happen to remind people of my family's music, then that's a good thing. But certainly never tried to, sit around and learn their whole catalog or, I've always wanted to do my thing.
Right. But I've seen you step up there and get it done with them on that level for sure.
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, when they were still playing, I mean, I got to sit in quite a bit and it was always fun.
What about this other project, the Royal Southern Brotherhood?
Mm-hmm.
Do you go back and forth with them, or is that?
No, I did 4 years with them. I left in April, all on good terms. There's no bad blood. I was doing Royal Southern Brotherhood. I was doing my solo band. I'm a big family man. My son's 15. I recently got engaged, and one thing had to go. And since I did 4 years with them and really shoved my solo career to the back burner, I thought, let me wrap up with them, the touring and the recording, and then go off and do my thing. So I love all those guys. We're still in touch, all the time, and we'll talk about some reunion stuff. So we'll play again.
I think I heard you say one time about it was like when you were first approached about it. You said like putting 5 quarterbacks together.
Yeah.
So how was it? How did you guys gel? It was great stuff.
I think it gelled really well. The beginning of it was so kind of murky because all 5 cats in that band fronted their own bands. So you're talking about 5 leaders. So I think at first it was very much a mixture of Cyril's thing and Mike Zito's thing and my thing, and as it grew, we started to write together more, and in some ways that really helped the band. In some ways it kind of hurt it because it was almost like, oh, that too many cooks in the kitchen thing. I mean, it wasn't detrimental by any means, but it tended to kind of spin off, you know, and kind of get a little bit away from the original basic songs that we started with and the basic approach. And, you know, that happens to a lot of bands on the second record. They think they got to make a better thing and a more complicated thing or a more interesting thing. And it's like, do the thing that people fell in love with the first place, you know, in a way, not repeat it, but, you know, if you have a formula that works. So I think that, you know, we'll definitely do some festivals and stuff again together, and got nothing but love for those guys.
What is your songwriting process?
It's so weird because, you know, you have writers out there that sit down every day at noon and just write something, and I'm not that guy. And
You don't practice guitar either, right?
I have started to practice guitar. Yeah, for a while there, I just didn't. I had this weird thing. I had read someone was similar in that every night at the gig when they picked up the guitar, it was like rediscovering it. So I went through a period of that, but I do practice guitar. But with writing, I'm a little less disciplined, but I really go by, you know, all this stuff is floating around us. And we as artists, we're just fortunate to be able to pull it down and fashion it into a song. So it's hard to even take credit for it, really, because I think all the melodies and the grooves and everything float around us. But I got an iPhone, and if a melody comes to my mind, or if I'm sitting around playing guitar and a riff comes out, I immediately record it on the iPhone. And I think right now I'm sitting on 100, 120 small ideas like that. So the discipline comes through when it's time to pull out the phone, go through each of those, pick the best 20, and start to flesh them into full songs. And that's the process for me to make a record. It's like, wow, I have a year's worth of all these ideas and co-writes with other people, sound check jams, where like we just hit this really cool thing. That'll become a piece of this song or a piece of that. I'll overhear somebody say something. It's like, that's a great song title. I'll talk that and like literally anything. I might be like, you know, hear a beat in my head and I'll sing the beat into the phone. It could be anything. And it goes into the phone. And then when I come, oh, okay, I have to have a record out by September. Well, by June, I better be pulling this phone out and fashioning these into songs. So that's kind of how I reverse engineer it from the due date. And yeah. And obviously, other times I'm sitting around and something just falls in your lap, you know. But that's typically the process, you know. It's kind of crazy, but it works for me.
How did you come about this Midnight Lake Michigan? That is sweet.
Thank you, man. That's my favorite song on the latest record. We were done recording, and the guys that were assembled to be the band were asking if they were all done. Anything else? You need us to punch any fixes on the bass or the drums, like, you know. And I said, man, can you guys hang out for just a little bit? And I talked to my producer and I said, you know, there's so many songs on this record, and I do an instrumental on every one of my records. Can you let me have like just this 10-minute mood piece? And I described the layout. It wasn't written. Nothing in that was written. It was an improv piece, and they just followed me. And I thought we'd record it 3 or 4 times, and then kind of Frankenstein the best part of this one, the best part of that one. We only played it once. So what you hear on the record, we only played it one time, and then everybody split, and the record was done. No overdubs, totally live, one time, no practice, just vibe piece. And man, it's my favorite track on the record. You know, I really think it really makes you kind of listen to what the guitar is trying to say. You know, it has so much space. Thank you, I appreciate it.
You explored other, you know, art fields, right? You were acting, theater.
Yeah, I did theater acting all through high school, and kind of when I left high school, I had a chance to go on tour with the Allman brothers. They were right starting their reunion tour, and I thought, well, that would be good because maybe by the end of that, I would know if I want to do music, and if I don't, I'll go and do acting. And never really had any like desire to do TV or movies. I wanted to do theater. And man, I got done with that tour. I was like, I want to make music, you know.
Sold.
Yeah, it was over with. I'm still into acting. I've done a little bit here and there. If anything comes my way, I would entertain it for sure.
What was that? The Dan Bruder? Who the hell is Dan Bruder? Is that
Hmm.
the name of that?
Yeah, it was an internet TV show that was being shopped to HBO, and they had some interest from some networks. It was a really funny premise. The premise was a 55-year-old musician who thinks he's like about to make it. You know, like he's right around the corner from being this big star. And I had a really great role in it. I actually was also a writer on the show. I had a blast with it. It was a shame that it didn't get picked up by a network. You know, hundreds of shows are pitched every year. But we filmed, I think, 6 episodes, and it's out there if you look hard enough. And you know, it was nice to know after a long time that I still had some acting chops. You know.
Yeah. So at that point you decided this is going to be music is going to be my trip after that one tour.
After that tour, yeah. I mean, I literally got off of that Allman Brothers tour in '89. I was 17 years old, and I moved in to a house with my father in Nashville, and that tour for them was so successful that the record label talked them into making a brand new studio record, which they hadn't done in 10 plus years. So when my dad went away to do that, I asked him if I could have my band, when we were 17, move into the house. You know, I was asking him a lot, so that we could just woodshed every day. And he was like, hell yeah. And he was very gracious and let my band of you know, heathens come live in his home for, geez, I think it was 4 or 5 months while we practiced and tried to play little shows. And we were just kids, but that was, you know, a real kind of defining moment of like, all right, I want to get something off the ground. So.
Did you know all along that you had the music in you? Like, did it come naturally?
Yeah.
You met your father later on, right? Did you
Yeah.
know that was your dad? Like, who, you know, what your lineage was?
Yeah, because, you know, by the time I was, you know, yay high, you know, he was on the cover of all the magazines with Cher. So it was hard to not know, you know, that was my dad. And he was also, you know, back then, you know, a younger, much bigger star, just, you know, by proxy of you know, the historically speaking with Allman Brothers Band. So yeah, I knew he was my father, but I also knew organically that I gravitated towards music. I fell in love with vinyl records. It was mystical to me. I would look and devour every lyric. I was such a listener from age 5 to 13. I say 13 because that's when I started to play guitar. It really kind of blows me away when I think back to how much I listened to, because I hear music now and I'm like, I know every nuance of every instrument of this entire album, and it's because when I was 6 years old, I was taking my mom's records, going back to my room on my little tiny, you know, you open up the record player, is, you know, Sears record player, and then I saw my first concert when I was 9, and it was Cheap Trick, and he busted out the 5-neck guitar, and I was like, okay, I know what I want to do. At least what I want to do. I don't know if I'll be able to, but I want to do that. That's too cool. That's when it kind of, the bug bit me.
Yeah. We've had a bunch of musicians on, and a question I always have to ask: do you think that a musician is born a musician?
I think it's both. I think that you're absolutely born with it. You know, when I was 5 years old and singing to the radio, I knew, even though I couldn't like put it into words, I knew that I was singing on key. I knew that I was able to lock in and never be sharp or flat, you know. And when I heard other people sing, I could tell if they were sharp or flat. And I couldn't tell you that, but I could tell you that it didn't sound right. Like, so I knew, you know, if I was ever keeping a beat, like, I could follow. You know, you remember The Jerk with Steve Martin? He's like, you know, you know, that whole thing. I know people like that. You know, there are people that are tone deaf. There are people that are like groove deaf, you know, and it's hard for them to just naturally, you know, hold a beat. So I knew as a real youngster that I had all of that in me. By the grace of God, that's great. But it's what you do with it. you do have to hone it. You do have to practice it. You do have to work it. If you're a bodybuilder, you're not going to wake up one morning with, you know,
Right.
you've got to work it.
Yeah.
And it gets better. It gets more refined. Especially a singing voice takes years to control, to gain confidence in, to have the right breathing techniques. It's all technique. It's all touch. It's a lot of what's the thing you once you put in 10,000 hours,
Right.
you've got the equivalent of being a doctorate in that field or a professional in that field. Everybody's even if you're born with this amazing gift, you got to put in that time.
No doubt about it.
Yep.
No doubt. Do you feel that being exposed to the way your dad and so many other? I mean, you've been so blessed to meet so many
Yep.
other performers and but working on the road. I mean, it's one thing the actual being on the stage, but the whole bit that goes into getting there, the whole touring. I mean, and the toll that takes. There's glamour, but on
Yeah,
at certain levels.
I mean, most everything in life, as we all know, is a trade-off. So the trade-off with the touring life is that, yeah, you get to go to work at 8:30 p.m. for a couple hours, but the work is really the whole thing.
Yeah.
Away from home, I miss driving my own car. I miss cooking my own meals. I love to cook. I miss my family like crazy. I miss the comfort of my home, my pets, all of these, things that, uh, you know, the other side of life for the people that kind of work the normal jobs and stuff, they get that every day, you know? So they might look into our world and go, oh my God, if I only had that, but it's a big sacrifice. I really try and always balance the two. But, at the end of the day, my job for 2 hours is to make people forget about the world and have fun. And I think that's cathartic. I think it's, especially in this crazy, like, how crazy has the world become? Even the last 20 years, we don't have to even expound on that. We know where we're at as human beings. It's a freaky time. And now more than ever, I think that it takes the musicians, the poets, the painters, the actors, all the artists have to balance that insanity. There needs to be some relief. So when people go to a museum or they read a poem or they see an excellent movie or a play or see a concert, you're feeling that need for them to have some relief from this insanity over here. So I think like us as artists, we're 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 fighting a good fight. You
How
know,
do you keep yourself grounded through it all,
I've never done drugs.
though?
I try to hit the gym when I can. I definitely watch, what I put into my body. Um, I keep family really close. So, balancing, being a big family man and a touring musician, the balance is, I bring family to the road. So I bring my fiance out quite a bit. I bring my son out, bringing them out to me, you know, um, and then bringing the music home. Anywhere you walk in my home, there's a guitar on a stand. There's 10 guitars in all the different rooms. So when I'm home, I can pick up a guitar and play. And I watch, DVDs of Clapton and J.J. Cale, and I spin vinyl, nothing but vinyl. So, people often ask me, well, how do you balance like being a family man, being a, musician out on tour? Um, I cross pollinate. I bring the family to the tour. I bring the music to the home.
Great,
Yeah.
beautiful. How much do you think music has been compromised digitally?
Well, do you have an hour? It's it it's twofold. The plus side, I got my phone here. I have my entire music collection. I have 400 albums that I love right here. I can listen at any time. That's beautiful. The quality's crap, and we all know it. Anybody that has an ear for music, and it's because of the digital, man. It's ones and zeros. What about the information in between those? They're getting to where it's tighter and tighter and a more fulfilling, experience. The files are getting fatter, juicier. It's a trade-off, man. We want something that's convenient. That's great to hold your whole collection in your hand. I think that's amazing. So certainly on the road, I'm very grateful for that.
Right.
When I'm home, I spend vinyl. Steve Jobs, inventor of the iPod. Pretty much the whole spearhead behind the MP3 revolution. Went home and played vinyl.
What has that done to the musician and the royalties of your music being played and stolen and pirates and on and on and on?
Everybody gave Lars Ulrich from Metallica so much beef because he came out and, really spoke out against it.
Yeah.
But what he was trying to say was, first of all, the thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you sell a record and you're on a record label and that record sells for $15, you get $1.
Yeah.
$1.
Yep.
So, when a guy like that is speaking, he's someone of his stature that's worth X amount. They're not worried about if, oh man, I didn't make that extra million. They don't care. They're set for life.
Right.
It's the principle at that point. You don't walk in a library and go, I love these 20 books, and walk out with them and keep them forever. You don't walk into a Barnes and Noble and walk out with 10 books you didn't pay for. So why are you going on the internet and stealing music? But on the other hand, it's happening because it's so easy to get on a computer and do. And a lot of people don't equate it with being wrong, and I understand that too. I think at the end of the day, if you're getting your music out there, then if people can come to the shows and buy a t-shirt, and so like if they get that music free, fine. But if they come out, if they fall in love with that record, go support that band, buy the t-shirt, maybe buy the record anyway and give it to a friend. Like find a way, because a band is, doing this as a business too, but so it's two-sided. We're not going to get away from that. I mean, as we're having this conversation, 50,000 records are being downloaded right now, illegally. Yeah. You're not going to stop it, right. But maybe there's a creative way to just inspire people by, like, hey, when you downloaded that, the guy that works at the CD factory that wraps them in shrink wrap has less work to do now. And his job, there's so many people in the industry that work for the common good and the common goal, that the more people download free stuff, the smaller the workforce is for this industry. Like, right. They lose jobs. So it's a double-edged sword, because an artist like me, that's not a big deal. I'm just really happy people are hearing my music, and I'm only going to make $1 off each record sold anyway, so it's not a huge loss, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just hope if they get the record, come see a show, grab a t-shirt, find a way to pitch in, and give a little back.
What about that artist that's trying to find his way and trying to get in the game? It's got to be that much harder. Not that it was ever easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a harder time to be a new artist, and it's an easier time. It's easier because you can make a record in your basement.
True.
You can get online and promote yourself. You can get out there and try and make a splash with it. You could record a YouTube video with a friend that loves cinematography, and it might blow up and get 10 million views. That wasn't around back in the day.
Right.
But what was around back in the day in the 60s, 70s, and 80s was, a business construct that supported nurturing.
Yeah.
When they signed a band, they signed you for 3 to 4 records. And if you didn't quite turn a profit in the first couple, if they believed in you, they kept going, and you'd eventually pop. At least they hoped you did.
Right.
But at least they gave you that umbrella, that home for 3 to 5 years where you could go out and at least work towards it. Now, you get signed to a deal and you don't sell anything the first record out, you're gone. You are gone. So, like I said, it's both the best time to start out as an artist, and it's the worst. Right. It depends.
But if the way to make your gravy is to get out on the road and get gigs, play gigs, that's the way you're going to make money. That's really hard for somebody to wiggle into the game.
True. And that's where you get the whole chicken or the egg thing. Like, should I do a record first? Should I get on tour first? Like, how do I get on tour if nobody knows me?
Right.
So my advice, and I'm a producer as well. I produce young artists, and I actually get asked this question a ton. And this is only my opinion. I don't, say that I'm any kind of, authority on the topic. But I have been there. My opinion is get the best sounding record you can get. If there's a musician in your town that's really great, get him to produce it and coach you through getting your performances onto that record. You know, you can make a great record for a couple grand or 10 grand, you know, a really great one. A lot of blues records you and I listen to right now are being done for 10 to 15 grand. And then just pick a tri-state or 5-state area and get on the phone. I'll play any night. I'll play for $100. Put me in on a Monday. Put me in on a Tuesday. Have me. Literally, I used to call for myself and act as a different dude. Hey man, no, Devon Allman's really good, man. You're gonna love him. He'll play for $50. I did that. I did that a lot.
That's what's cool about you, though. Like you didn't work off the name so much. You earned everything you've gotten, and I think
I used to sit in an office with a fake name and sell myself for $100. Yeah, this is 20 years ago, but I really did that. That was my day job. I'd get on the phone. I live in St. Louis. I was booking shows Chicago, Kansas City, you know, in a 5-state area, and I just did it, and I kept doing it, and I kept doing it. But I would try and maximize the experience. Like if there's 10 people there, I got their emails, man. Yeah. You know, I gave them a free 3-song sampler. I hustled and hustled. You gotta hustle. But what you're saying, you know, my father being Greg Allman, people are like, oh man, you got it made, bro.
Yeah, right.
No.
Right.
No, I don't want to have it made. You know, I don't want to get to the top of the mountain and have someone go, hey, how was that helicopter ride? You know, I'm not cheesing out. Yeah, no. So the one thing I can say with pride is that every single relationship I have in this industry, from my agent, my label, my management, my publicist, my social media team, all of those were cultivated by me. There was never my dad going, hey, give this person a call. Not one time. I don't want that. I want to build myself, man, you know?
Now you do, you played the guitar you play is a Les Paul, right? That you have signed by Les Paul.
It was probably about, I don't know, 8 years ago. He was still alive, and I knew he played every Monday night in New York City, and I just wanted to go down to the Iridium and shake his hand. That's all I wanted. And I went down there, and I had a gig later that night uptown, so I brought my guitar, and they took me back to meet him, and he goes, oh, you want me to sign your Les Paul guitar? And I go, yeah. You're the only one I would let sign. I'm not into like autographs on guitars, but I'm into his. So he signed it, and he handed it back, and he goes, I'm gonna bring you up on the 5th song. And I was like, all right. So I got to play with him. Man, you know, if I knew today was the last day of my career and somebody said, what was the highlight? It would be playing with Les Paul. I mean, it was.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I mean, it was. That was just like, you know, the best brush with greatness. I've had many very blessed moments in my career thus far, and I'm just getting started. But that was like 2 years of guitar lessons condensed into 7 minutes, like just trading licks with him and seeing how effortless and his touch was still there. I wondered like if he'd really be that, you know, over 90 years old at the time. But he killed it, you know, and I learned a lot. Yeah.
What do you see? Anybody coming up now to really, you know, get you going?
I just produced a record on an artist named Owen Campbell. He's from Australia. He's the #1 blues artist in Australia. He's trying to break through here. Oh man, I mean, his record's unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I really helped out the equation. I'm proud of the production job, but it's nothing without songs, and he had amazing songs. So really excited about Owen Campbell. There's a cat out of St. Louis, Tyler Stokes. He's 22. I produced his record. He's about to start nationally touring. So I hate to kind of pimp my own guys that are my clients, but at the same time, I chose them over other people that want to work with me because, man, they really blow me away. So I think both of them will become fixtures on the scene, you know.
Before we get you out of here, what do you, how do you pick the guys in your band? How do you find the guys you want to tour with, the guys you want to play with night after night, record with?
You know, you know, I started in St. Louis, so there was a core in the 90s. There was a core of like players, and you knew who was like for real, you know, and I've always been able to tap into that, and they're all my friends, and I love them. And everything else has just been kind of organic. You know, you stumble upon this guy, he was recommended by this person, and you were in a bind to get the gigs done, so you used this guy because you really respected the recommendation, and then he sticks around for a couple years, and then this guy comes on board as a tour manager, and then you hear him play guitar, and you're like, you're in the band, you're not doing that anymore. You know, and that's organically just how it happens, you know?
The last question I want to ask you is about the strap.
Yeah.
That's a tribute to your uncle?
Yeah, you know, my uncle, for those that aren't familiar, my uncle played a Les Paul, and he played an SG as well. But he had a real iconic strap, and it's a leather strap with a big brass ring, you know. And all the photos of Dwayne are that strap. Yeah. So the guy that created it called me years ago and said, hey man, I made one for you just like Dwayne's, would you like it? And I was like, yes, I would love to kind of you know, take that visual side of his thing into the next generation. So
that's so cool the way you do it, because you pay homage, so to speak.
Tasteful,
Yet do your thing.
Yeah.
It's really good. Dude, you're a tremendous dude, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. And hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Love to. Anytime.
New York, yeah.
You got it?
Good luck tonight.
Thanks, bro.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.